When Jake Morrison told me to get out of his sight, for the umpteenth time, I suddenly had an awakening. Turns out, I was the evil supporting female character in a campus romance novel, following the male lead around like a lovesick puppy, diligently, serving as an obstacle between him and the heaven-sent female lead. Until they got engaged, I was abandoned by the main character group, left in the pouring rain, got into a car accident, and broke both my legs. After learning my fate, I was so scared. I immediately grabbed my luggage. I raised 3 fingers and swore to the sky. Jake Morrison, don't worry. I'm leaving right now. I promise. I'll never appear in front of you again for the rest of my life. I won't get in your way. Luna, can't you have some self-respect? I'm already trying to drive you away. And you still insist on staying here, following me around. Are you? Wait, what did you say? After a long pause, Jake Morrison seemed to finally process what happened. He paused and turned toward me. His tongue grew serious. What did you just say? Say it again. The surroundings suddenly became much quieter. Everyone was secretly looking our way. The entire elite social circle knew that I'd been clinging to Jake Morrison since childhood. Wherever he went, I went. When he learned piano, I learned violin in the classroom next door. When he got into Lincoln High, I followed him to Lincoln High. When he chose science track, I also chose science. Everyone said Luna was Jake Morrison's little tail. Couldn't shake her off, no matter what. But in high school, he met new friends and started getting annoyed with me. He kept avoiding me. The most he'd say to me was telling me to get lost. Luna, can't you be more independent? Am I your boyfriend? Can't you just stay away from me? Before, I always brushed off Jake Morrison's words. Yeah, I was pretty thick-skinned. After getting scolded a few times, the next day, I bounced back full of energy and cheerfully approached him again. But now I couldn't do that anymore. I already knew I was the evil support character. What could be more important than saving my own life? I ignored Jake Morrison's expression that looked like complete garbage and went to get my luggage, dragging it to the center of the hotel lobby. Then I held up my phone in front of him, sincerely and seriously. I said, look, I'm not lying to you just now. I already booked my plane ticket. I'm going back to school right away. I'll never bother you again. A gloomy cold lashed across his face. For a while, Jake Morrison said nothing until the real female lead, Sophie, came over and tugged his arm, quietly mumbling complaints. Only then did he turn his head to the side. He let out a cold laugh. Fine. Remember what you said today? Luna, get lost. Once you're gone, don't ever come back. I quickly agreed and turned around, dragging my suitcase as I ran off. The next morning, I was back at school. My roommate was still sleeping. When she poked her head out from under the covers and saw me, she was obviously startled. She rubbed her eyes. Luna, weren't you supposed to be following Jake Morrison on that diving vacation in Hawaii? How are you suddenly back? Don't tell me you couldn't find him. I couldn't blame my roommate for asking. Jake Morrison's trip was kept secret from me. He'd recently won a major international math competition award. To celebrate, he invited many close friends on a trip. Later, I somehow heard about it and shamelessly followed along, buying a ticket for the next flight. I tracked down the hotel from photos in their social media posts. Then as soon as I walked in, before I could say a word, he blocked me at the door. Luna, what are you doing here? Did I invite you? Are you serious? Can you just go back? After I told my roommate the whole story, she scratched her head. So you just came straight back. I crouched down, packing my luggage without looking up. Yeah, he was trying so hard to get rid of me. If I didn't come back, that would be really clueless of me. My roommate looked completely confused. Did you take the wrong medication, girl? She scratched her nose. He's driven you away so many times. Which time did you actually give up for real? Didn't you say Jake Morrison just says the opposite of what he means? That he's stubborn and twisted, but if you're just enough, you can eventually warm him up. Looking back now, how stupid was that thinking? If I could have warmed him up, wouldn't it have happened by now? I sighed and waved my hands frantically. Stop it. I've really turned over a new leaf. I'm definitely going to stay far away from him. My roommate yawned. I don't believe it. The next moment she widened her eyes. I pulled out a study abroad exchange application for England from my bookshelf and carefully wrote my name on it. Stroke by stroke, Professor Foster said. There's an experimental project there that's perfect for me. I rejected it without even thinking before. Now I'm ready to try it. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison's side fell into an awkward silence when Luna arrived. They were in the hotel lobby about to take their luggage upstairs. Someone hesitated, then took out a room number they'd booked on their phone and handed it to Jake Morrison. Jake, should we keep this room for Luna or cancel it before coming? They've been discussing how many rooms to book. Jake Morrison had caught twice and said to include Luna too. She's just a little follower. Wherever I go, she has to tag along. She'll definitely chase after us.
So annoying now.
Jake Morrison looked at this room right across from his own. He felt even more annoyed. He remembered how that girl had sworn to cut ties with him completely. And he almost crushed the water bottle in his hand. Keep it for what? Didn't she say she was going to disappear from my sight completely? Just let her disappear. Why should we care about her? Many people looked at each other uncertainly, until someone realized Jake Morrison was really angry this time. They quickly stepped forward to hold him back. Forget it. Forget at it. I think Luna was just talking. She's been chasing you for so long. She probably hasn't even left yet. She's waiting for you to go coax her. Jake Morrison's expression improved slightly. He snorted coldly, thinking, coax her? He would never do such a thing. Within 3 days would come crawling back on her own. That's just how she was.
It was peak season now.
They should keep the room for her. I told my parents about my plans to go to England, though they were somewhat surprised. They didn't object. 4 days later, I gathered all the materials and filled out the application. I submitted it to my advisor. When she saw it, she was surprised at first. Then she quickly became happy. You finally came to your senses, Luna. Our school has many students there. They all look out for each other. So you won't be alone. I'll sign this for you now. And upload the documents online. Go back and pack your things. The flight is probably in about a week. This batch of students from our school will go together. My advisor was a big name in the industry, with students all over the world. Since she said this, the experimental team's atmosphere should be pretty good. I lowered my head and softly said yes. Thinking this way, I walked out of the teacher's office with the materials, feeling a bit of anticipation for my upcoming life. When I got downstairs, just as I was about to call a taxi to go downtown, to buy some things I needed, someone suddenly called out to me, Luna, what are you doing here? I turned around. It was a classmate from Jake Morrison's major. Actually, we were about the same age. But for some reason, his friends all liked calling me Luna. This person had a good relationship with Jake Morrison. He was originally supposed to go to Hawaii too, but something came up with his family at the last minute. So he canceled his trip. He scratched his nose and walked toward me. Luna, did you come back early? I saw Jake, and the others are still diving there. Looks like they're having a great time. They posted a lot on social media.
Didn't you see?
I wasn't interested in those things. I waved my hand, about to politely decline this topic. He'd already turned his phone screen toward me. Jake Morrison hardly ever updated his social media before. But these past few days, for some reason, in the center of my vision, I could see he'd posted many updates in a row. In every photo, he was smiling happily. Sometimes he was looking down, organizing his diving equipment. Sometimes he was sitting on the beach, watching the sunrise. Without exception, the original female lead was by his side. In every photo, the two of them were playfully teasing each other, laughing and chatting. I looked at the glowing screen of the phone, my eyes scanning the carefully curated photos. Jake and Sophie on a yacht. Jake and Sophie eating shaved ice. Jake looking at Sophie with a softness I had spent 12 years trying to earn, only to be given to someone he met a few months ago. Before my awakening, seeing this would have sent me into a hyperventilating panic. I would have cried in my dorm room, bombarded his phone with pathetic texts, and waited by his favorite campus coffee shop to demand an explanation I had no right to ask for. Now, I just felt a strange, hollow relief. The plot of the book was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I looked up at his friend, whose eyes were darting across my face, eager to catch the moment my heart broke. The lighting in Hawaii is really great, I said mildly, pushing his phone back toward him. Tell him congrats on the math award for me. Anyway, I have to go buy some vacuum-sealed bags for my luggage. See you. His jaw dropped slightly.
Wait.
Luna, you're not mad? You're not going to call him? Why would I? I smiled, entirely genuine. He looks happy. It's a good look for him. I didn't wait to see his reaction. I turned and walked away, my steps feeling lighter than they had in years. I went downtown, bought my packing supplies, a thick waterproof coat for the London weather, and a new SIM card. When I got back to the dorm, I took my old SIM card out of my phone. For a second, I stared at the tiny piece of plastic. It contained thousands of unanswered texts to Jake, years of saved voicemails of him sighing in annoyance, and the contact information of a social circle that only tolerated me because I was the campus joke. I snapped the plastic in half and dropped it into the trash can. 3 days later, my bags were packed. Professor Foster had fast-tracked my paperwork with an efficiency that made my head spin. My roommate, Chloe, sat on her bed, watching me zip up my massive suitcase. You're really doing this, she said softly. The skepticism was gone from her voice, replaced by a lingering shock. You're actually leaving. My flight is in 4 hours. I hauled the suitcase upright. Chloe got up and hugged me tight. Good for you, Luna.
Seriously.
I was so tired of watching you break your own heart over a guy who couldn't even bother to learn your coffee order. Have a safe flight. And find yourself a hot British guy. I laughed, hugging her back. I'm going there for the experimental physics project, Chloe. Not for men. I think I'm done with men for a very long time. As my taxi pulled away from the university gates, I didn't look back. The sky above me was a clear, brilliant blue. For the first time in my life, I wasn't following Jake Morrison's footsteps. I was making my own. 1 week later, Jake Morrison pushed his luggage cart through the airport terminal, a deep scowl settling on his face. The Hawaii trip had been a triumph. Sophie had been charming, the diving had been exhilarating, and yet, an irritating itch had crawled under his skin for the last 4 days of the vacation. It was the silence. Every time he checked his phone, there were no new messages. No, Jake. Did you eat yet? No, Jake. I saw you went diving. Is it dangerous? No, Jake. I miss you. He had intentionally posted those photos with Sophie. He knew his friends back home would show them to Luna. He had expected her to blow up his phone, to show up at the airport in tears, demanding his attention. He had even prepared his lines. I told you to get lost, Luna. Stop acting crazy. But as he walked out of the arrivals gate, scanning the crowd, there was no familiar girl in an oversized sweater waving frantically at him. Looking for someone? Sophie asked softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. No. Jake snapped, harsher than he intended. He softened his tone. Just thought my dad might have sent the driver. When classes resumed on Monday, Jake kept his eyes peeled. In the lecture halls, in the cafeteria, by the library. Nothing. He sat in his usual spot at the back of the advanced calculus class. The seat next to him, the one Luna always aggressively defended from anyone else just so she could sit near him, remained empty. By Wednesday, the annoyance had morphed into a quiet, simmering anger. She's playing games, he thought, gripping his pen so hard his knuckles turned white. She's trying to play hard to get. It's pathetic. After class, he cornered Liam, the friend who had stayed behind.
Where is she?
Jake demanded, not bothering to clarify who she was. Liam blinked, looking nervous. Luna? Dude, I thought you knew. She left. Left where? Her dorm? Did she move off campus to throw a tantrum? No, Jake. Liam swallowed hard. She left the country. She took that exchange spot with Professor Foster's team. She flew to London a week ago. She's gone. Jake froze. The ambient noise of the bustling hallway seemed to dial down to a muted hum. London? He repeated, the word tasting foreign and wrong in his mouth. She hates the cold. She hates being far from me. Yeah, well. Liam rubbed the back of his neck. When I showed her your post from Hawaii, she didn't even care. She just said you looked happy, bought some packing bags, and dipped. Her number is disconnected, too. Jake stared at Liam, a strange, suffocating pressure building in his chest. Without a word, he turned and walked away. He pulled out his phone, his thumb moving on autopilot to Luna's contact. He pressed dial. The number you have reached is no longer in service. The automated voice was cold. Final. Jake stood in the middle of the campus quad, students bumping past him. He looked down at the screen. For 12 years, turning around meant seeing Luna. Now, he turned around, and there was only empty space. London was perpetually gray, but to me, it felt like standing in brilliant sunshine. Professor Foster's experimental project was stationed at University College London, UCL. The lab was rigorous, the hours were brutal, and I had never been happier. Without the exhausting mental load of analyzing Jake's moods, guessing his schedules, and crying over his rejections, I suddenly had an immense amount of brain power. I threw myself into the physics data, organizing the kinetic models so efficiently that within a month, I was promoted to the lead data analyst for the undergraduate tier. Your projections on the particle decay are flawless, Luna. A deep, crisp voice said over my shoulder. I spun around in my rolling chair. Elias Thorne, the PhD supervisor of our division, was leaning against my desk. He was a quintessential British academic, messy dark hair, sharp cheekbones, a carelessly worn tweed blazer, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He was notoriously strict. He had made 3 junior researchers cry in my first week. But with me, Elias was different. He didn't see me as an annoyance. He saw my mind. Thanks, Elias, I said, rubbing my tired eyes. I just adjusted the algorithms based on the Tuesday anomalies. It wasn't that hard. Don't undersell yourself, he said firmly, handing me a cup of tea. It was Earl Grey, exactly how I liked it. Humility is a virtue, but false modesty is a waste of time. You have a brilliant mind, Luna. It makes me wonder what you were doing with it before you came here. I paused, warming my hands on the ceramic mug. I was using it to calculate the exact walking speed of a boy who hated me, just to accidentally on purpose bump into him in the hallway. I was distracted, I said softly. But I'm awake now. Elias looked at me for a long moment, his gaze piercing but gentle.
Good.
Because there's a conference in Geneva next month. I'm presenting a paper. I want you as my co-author. My head snapped up. Geneva? Me? Yes, you. He smiled, a rare expression that made the lab suddenly feel very warm. Get your passport ready, Luna. As I walked back to my flat that night, the London drizzle lightly kissing my cheeks, I realized something profound. I hadn't thought about Jake Morrison in 3 weeks. The terror of the evil supporting character plotline was fading. I wasn't a supporting character anymore. I was the protagonist of my own life. Back in the States, winter had set in, and Jake Morrison was falling apart. It wasn't obvious at first. He still got top grades. He still dated Sophie. But the cracks were showing. He found himself randomly pausing in the middle of a sentence, expecting someone to chime in with absolute agreement. He would walk into a cafe and wait by the counter, forgetting that Luna wasn't there to hand him his black coffee before he even had to ask. Sophie was perfect, sweet, and independent. But she had her own life. When Jake was stressed, she told him to go to therapy. When Jake was busy, she made her own plans. It was a healthy, normal relationship. Jake hated it. He didn't want normal. He realized, with a sickening twist in his gut, that he craved the absolute, terrifying devotion Luna had given him. He missed being the center of someone's universe. He missed the way her eyes lit up when he threw her a meager crumb of attention. Once you're gone, don't ever come back, he had told her. He had been so incredibly stupid. Jake, are you even listening? Sophie's voice snapped him back to reality. They were sitting in the library.
Yeah.
Sorry, he muttered, staring blankly at his laptop screen. On it was an open tab for the UCL Physics Department directory. He had found Luna's email address weeks ago, but he hadn't sent anything. What could he say? You've been so distant lately, Sophie sighed, closing her book. If this is about the internship pressure, I get it. But if you're just not invested in this, tell me. Jake looked at her. The heaven-sent female lead. She was beautiful, smart, and reasonable. And he felt absolutely nothing for her. I'm sorry, Sophie, he said quietly. I think we should break up. Sophie didn't cry. She just looked at him with a mixture of pity and annoyance. I kind of figured. You've been a ghost for months. Go figure out whatever is broken inside your head, Jake. When she left, Jake immediately bought a plane ticket. There was an open undergraduate summit in London next week. He didn't need to go, but he was going. He was going to find Luna, apologize, and bring her back. She had chased him for 12 years. She couldn't just turn off those feelings in 6 months. She was probably just waiting for him to make the first move.
Yes.
That had to be it. The UCL campus was bustling despite the damp cold. I was laughing, walking out of the science building with Elias. We had just finalized our Geneva presentation, and he was treating me to dinner to celebrate. I'm telling you, the peer review committee is entirely biased toward traditional models, I argued, pulling my scarf tighter around my neck. And I'm telling you that your radical new model is going to terrify them into accepting it, Elias countered, his shoulder brushing mine. He smoothly opened a large black umbrella as a light rain began to fall, holding it over both of us. The proximity was comfortable, warm. Luna. I stopped dead in my tracks. The voice cut through the sound of the London traffic and the pattering rain. It was a voice etched into my neural pathways, a voice that used to dictate my heartbeat. I turned. Standing 10 feet away, getting soaked in the rain, was Jake Morrison. He looked terrible. He was thinner, his hair was messy, and he was staring at me with a desperate, wild look in his eyes. He wasn't wearing a coat, just a sweater that was rapidly darkening with the rain. For a second, the old instinct flared, the urge to run to him, to shield him from the rain, to ask him what was wrong. But then I remembered the pouring rain from the novel's plot. The night the evil female lead was abandoned by him and Sophie. The night she dragged her heavy heart into the street and a car shattered both her legs. I didn't move. I just looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing but a mild sense of intrusion. Jake, I asked, my voice calm. What are you doing here? Jake took a step forward, his eyes darting from me to Elias, who was looking at Jake with cold, analytical calculation. I came to find you. Jake choked out, his voice trembling. Luna, I need to talk to you. I'm actually on my way to dinner, I said politely, as if speaking to a distant high school acquaintance. Is it urgent? The calmness in my voice seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He staggered a bit.
Urgent?
Luna, I flew across the ocean. You've been ignoring me for 6 months. You changed your number. You disappeared. You told me to get lost. I reminded him gently. You told me to never come back. I was just following your instructions, Jake. I didn't mean it, he yelled, his composure shattering. Students walking by turned to stare. You know I didn't mean it. You know how I get. Why didn't you just wait for me to cool down like you always do? I sighed. The sheer arrogance of it was almost impressive. Elias stepped forward slightly, placing himself half between me and Jake. "Mate," Elias said, his British accent clipped and dangerously low. "I don't know who you are, but you are causing a scene. And you are making my colleague uncomfortable." "Shut up," Jake snarled at him. "This has nothing to do with you. Luna, tell this guy to back off. Tell him who I am." I looked at Elias and gave him a reassuring nod. Then I stepped out from under the umbrella, letting the cold rain hit my face. I walked up to Jake, keeping a safe distance. "Who are you, Jake?" I asked quietly. I'm, he stammered, reaching out to grab my wrist. I dodged his hand smoothly. "You're a guy I used to know. A guy I wasted my childhood on. You never liked me, Jake. You liked the fact that I liked you. You treated me like dirt, and I let you. But I woke up. I broke up with Sophie," he blurted out, as if this was the ultimate prize. "I left her. I want you, Luna. I was stupid. I see it now. Please, come back to the States. We can start over." He looked pathetic. The proud, aloof male lead of the campus romance novel was groveling in the mud. If this were a different kind of story, this would be the moment I forgave him, moved to tears by his grand gesture. But I knew the truth. He didn't love me. He was just going through withdrawal from the ego trip I used to provide. "I don't want to start over with you, Jake," I said, my voice steady and resolute. "I have a life here. I have research, I have friends, I have a future. A future that doesn't revolve around guessing whether you're going to scream at me today or just ignore me." "You don't mean that," he whispered, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "You loved me." "I loved an illusion," I corrected him. "And the illusion is dead. Go home, Jake. Don't come looking for me again." I turned my back on him. I walked back to Elias, who wordlessly tilted the umbrella over me again. "Everything all right?" Elias asked softly as we walked away. "Perfectly fine," I said, and for the first time in my life, it was the absolute truth. Behind me, Jake Morrison fell to his knees on the wet pavement. I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, we were in Geneva. The conference was massive, teeming with the brightest minds in physics from around the globe. I was nervous, but Elias had been an anchor, coaching me through every slide, every potential counterargument. But underneath the academic anxiety, a different kind of dread was ticking like a time bomb in my chest. Today was November 14th. In the novel, November 14th was the day of the climax. It was the day Jake and Sophie got engaged. It was the day the evil female lead got drunk, ran out into a severe thunderstorm in despair, and was struck by a drunk driver. I had changed the continent, changed my major, and removed myself from the cast of characters. But the universe has a funny way of enforcing destiny. What if the plot demanded blood? What if I stepped out onto a Swiss street today and a taxi lost control? I spent the entire morning in my hotel room, too terrified to leave. I ordered room service. I didn't go near the windows. At 2 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I jumped. "Luna? It's Elias." I opened the door cautiously. He was standing there in a sharp charcoal suit, looking devastatingly handsome, holding a folder. He frowned when he saw my pale face. "Are you ill?" he asked, stepping inside and pressing the back of his hand against my forehead. His touch was cool and grounding. "No," I swallowed hard. "Just anxious. About the presentation." Elias looked at me intently. He knew me well enough by now to know I was lying. He didn't push. "The presentation isn't until 5 p.m., but it's storming outside. Heavy rain, thunder. The organizers have arranged private shuttles from the hotel basement to the convention center, so we don't have to step foot outside." My breath hitched. Heavy rain, thunder, the exact weather of my fated accident. "I don't want to go," I whispered, the terror finally leaking out. "Elias, I can't go outside today. Something terrible is going to happen." He didn't laugh. He didn't call me crazy. He just set his folder down on the desk, walked over, and gently took both of my hands in his. "Luna," he said softly, his stormy eyes locking onto mine. "I don't know what ghosts are chasing you today, but I promise you, I will not let anything happen to you. I will walk beside you every single step. You are brilliant, and you have worked too hard to let fear steal your moment on that stage." I looked at his hands holding mine. They were strong, steady hands. Hands that built things up, instead of pushing them away. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, I'll go." We took the elevator to the basement. We got into the secure shuttle. I gripped the armrest the entire 10-minute drive, waiting for the crash, waiting for the screech of tires. It never came. We arrived at the convention center seamlessly. At 5 p.m., I stood behind the podium in a massive auditorium. The lights blinded me slightly. I looked out into the crowd of hundreds of scientists. In the front row, Elias was looking at me, a proud, encouraging smile on his face. I took a deep breath, and I began to speak. I presented our data flawlessly. When the Q&A session began, a few skeptical older professors tried to tear into my methodology. I didn't flinch. I dismantled their arguments with polite, razor-sharp logic. By the end of it, the auditorium erupted into genuine applause. When I walked off the stage, my legs were trembling, not from broken bones, but from adrenaline. Elias was waiting in the wings. He didn't say a word. He just pulled me into a tight, fierce hug. I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the scent of cedar and rain. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11:59 p.m., November 14th. The second hand ticked forward. Midnight. November 15th. I survived. Tears finally spilled over my eyelashes, hot and heavy. The invisible chains of the plot snapped and dissolved into dust. I was free. I was completely, beautifully free. Elias pulled back slightly, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "You did it, Luna. You were magnificent. We did it," I whispered, looking up at him. And in that moment, under the dim backstage lights, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't the frantic, toxic desperation of a romance novel trope. It was soft, respectful, and overwhelmingly real. 5 years later, the cafe near the MIT campus was crowded. Jake Morrison sat in a booth, staring blankly at a complex physics paper on his laptop. He was a junior professor now. His career was respectable, but the brilliant spark of his youth had somehow fizzled out into mediocrity. He was alone. He had dated a string of women over the years, but none of them lasted. They all left when they realized they were competing with a ghost. He scrolled idly through an academic journal on his screen, trying to focus. Suddenly, his finger stopped. There, on the cover of the International Journal of Quantum Physics, was a photo. It was a woman in her mid-20s, her hair tied back, a confident, radiant smile on her face. She was standing next to a tall, handsome British man with stormy eyes, their hands naturally intertwined. The headline read, "Dr. Luna Vance and Dr. Elias Vance win the prestigious Horizon Award for Breakthrough in Kinetic Decay." Jake stared at the photo. His chest tightened so painfully he couldn't breathe. She looked beautiful. She looked powerful. She looked like a woman who had the entire world at her fingertips. He zoomed in on the photo, his eyes tracing the familiar contours of her face, desperately searching for the girl who used to follow him around in the rain. But she wasn't there. That girl was dead. The woman in the photo didn't even have a shadow of him left in her eyes. Slowly, with a trembling hand, Jake closed his laptop. He sat alone in the noisy cafe, finally understanding the true cost of his arrogance. Thousands of miles away in London, I stood by the large window of my new office, sipping Earl Grey tea. The sun was breaking through the gray clouds, casting a golden light over the city. "Ready to go home, Dr. Vance?" Elias asked, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind and resting his chin on my shoulder. I leaned back into his warmth, watching the sun hit the horizon. "Always," I smiled.